it look flat? You know, this image never looks flat, but I feel like it goes like diagonal that way and diagonal that way. I don't know. I've got a new position on the couch where I've got two legs on the floor this time. Who'd have thought it? I can just do things. Oh my god, I'm so special. So anyway, that was not an intro. Oh my god, Wonka. Well, Wonka. No, we're not watching Wonka. Hello. It's me, I'm back. Today we are looking at what I watched in December. Part 1. I'm saying part 1 because I'm going to film the other part next year. That's a weird statement. I've never done one of these in December before, so yeah. This will come out sometime in Jan, so it's good enough for me. So, I'm barreling down the Godzilla market right now, so a lot of these are going to be about Godzilla, but that's mostly at the end of this current section. So let's just dive into it. We started on the 2nd of December with Body Double, the Brian De Palma film, the Powerhouse version, which I burned onto my goddamn computer so we could show it at a theatre for my mate's birthday. It was great. I gave it 4 stars. It's probably a film I imagine I'll appreciate more on rewatch because it kind of stumps you on first watch, but with an audience it was really fun. But it was a really good film. It was a really interesting take on cinema and just his kind of films. It's very much oh, you know how this guy rips off Hitchcock a lot? Yeah, he kind of still does that, but that's okay, it's fun now. I mean, it's always been fun, realistically. Then I watched Doctor Who Wild Blue Yonder. I liked this one over the other 2. It was my favourite of the 3 specials. I haven't seen the Christmas special yet, obviously. It's the middle of December that I'm filming this. Pre-Christmas. But no, it was fun. It was just a good, fun horror, but also goofy episode. I know a lot of people criticize the goofy CGI effects. I'm also I don't know, I liked it. It was really fun. It was but it had its horror parts as well from theology horror. Oh my god, the Lovecraftian horror a lot of people were saying. But also just there was this one scene where they're in these dark corridors, and I was genuinely scared watching it. I'm like, oh my god, I don't know what the fuck's gonna come out, because it's you've got all these monsters that can shapeshift. I'm like, what's happening? So it was good. Definitely my favorite of the 3. I think the first episode's my least favorite of the 3, but I still liked all of them. I gave them all 4 stars on Serialized. Then I watched Godzilla -1. Was this the first time I watched it? This was the first time I watched it. I've watched it twice now. I gave it 4.5 stars this time. I really liked it. I saw it with my mate Guy. He was not a fan, but I don't really care. He's in one of those markets that when you go on Twitter, he's supporting all the people who think this film is kind of meh. And I'm like, man, it must be fun being in the minority. I loved it. I thought it was great. I'm like, oh my god, a Godzilla film with good human drama. A little sappy, especially the operatic music at the end. Not my kind of jam, but that's why I didn't give this 5 stars. I gave it 4.5, but I loved it. I loved Godzilla. I like how how it dealt with its themes. It was good. It looked great. It was tremendous. I hope I watched it again this month. That would be really fun. Anyway, then I watched Irreversible. Oh my god. I fucking forgot I watched Irreversible. I watched it because my mates had lent me their Blu-ray release, which was a bad DVD upscale, and I was initially like, I can't watch this, because it starts with the credits, and they were so pixelated. But they're also waving all around the place, so by the time the movie actually started, I was not really in it. I wasn't digging it. I knew what the topic was, but I knew that it was going backwards as well, and I kind of got more into the feel as it went on. And then, of course, the really pivotal scene, if you've seen Irreversible, or if you haven't, you probably know what the really pivotal scene, that's 9 minutes long? Yeah, that's a movie. The rest of it was a lot easier to watch, clearly. But I still gave it 4 stars, because it's one of those things where it's I think because of its artistic perspective, and, it's not going for an exploitative angle, it's going for realistic and fucked up in both the pre, post, and after, pre, during, and after effects kind of deal. Mostly because I didn't like it at first because of how racist and homophobic the main guy was, and then I realized kind of why. Like, it's one of those things where it's like one of those buried underneath the surface, you're kind of that person, and you get triggered or set off, and then bam, you just like let it all out. But the reason why he let it all out was like, oh shit. I'm not saying it's justifiable, but I'm also like, oh shit, alright. But yeah, so it was a really fucked up movie. If you don't want to see something this brutal, don't watch it. But I think as a depiction of something vile in cinema, it's on par with like The Entity as genuinely fucked up. But slightly different result. But yeah, powerful films. Surprisingly, not my favorite of his though. I still like Climax and Enter the Void more, or at least I think I like Enter the Void more. I've only watched it once, and that was a couple of years back. On the same day, to cleanse my palate, I rewatched the original Godzilla from 1954. I just chucked on my Godzilla Criterion because I figured, why not? I have it, I can watch it again. Actually, no. I remember that the Godzilla X Kong trailer came out, and I thought it looked really goofy, and I didn't like it. And I mentioned it to Guy, and he was like, "Oh, it's like late era Showa, like 70s stuff. You should watch that." And I'm like, "Oh god, all right." And I looked it up, realized there was so many I hadn't watched in between the original Godzilla and the late Showa era. And he's like, "Yeah, just watch it all. Start from the start." So I'm watching all of them individually. Started with Godzilla. I obviously love it. For me, it's a 5-star film. It grows on me more that I watch it because every now and again I get a little bored, but I'm like, you kind of you start to vibe with it when you really like harness like focusing on the characters because Godzilla's great. The effects are great. It's still like a not perfect version of what it is. Like having seen so many Godzilla films now, it's like it's not the perfect version of it, but it does it in such a way that is tremendous, especially as a for the time with its effects. The black and white works really well. It is a gorgeous film, and genuinely devastating. So yeah, I would obviously recommend it. I followed it up with Godzilla Raids Again, which I didn't like that much. I gave it 2.5 stars, knowing the fact that it's literally just a cash in. Oh, we need to get on because the bandwagon of Godzilla. We got to make the next movie, bring it out. Ishihiro Honda couldn't come back because he was doing another film, so they just got some other guy. And it was the first versus film. It's him versus Baragon. Is it Baragon? No, it's him versus Anguirus, which is just a dinosaur. It's not great. I gave it 2.5 stars. It is boring. When Godzilla does show up and he fights the monster, it's very repetitive. I don't know. A lot of the films are going to be like that, where you're going to expect the same kind of shit over and over. Potentially generic characters who are either scientists or journalists or something that allows them to be involved with learning new information. And then the monster, which is a person in a suit, fighting a monster, which is a person in a suit, or it's a puppet of some kind. And yeah, it's all the same shit, but I enjoy it. I gave it 2.5 stars. But then on the same day, I watched The Boy and the Heron. I watched the English dub mostly because it was the advanced screen. I didn't have time to go out later in the week to watch the subtitled version. But surprisingly, the Ghibli releases, I never know how to pronounce it, their releases for dub versions are usually really good. Obviously, they still go with the big A-star Hollywood cast, but they just somehow make it work. I think I heard that they had actually edited the mouth movements of this one to fit the English dub, but I might be wrong on that part. Either way, it was great. Beautiful film. I gave it 4.5 stars. One of my favorites of the year. I know some people are very particular about it because they're like, oh, it's just Miyazaki using the same shtick. Like everything that you've seen in the Miyazaki film kind of culminates in this. And despite that criticism, I'm like, yeah, but these same people also really like Twin Peaks: The Return. So what the fuck are you talking about? That show is literally just everything David Lynch put into one thing. You know, if you're gonna criticize Miyazaki for doing the exact same goddamn thing, I think that's kind of, ironic. So, yeah, I really liked it. I thought it was gorgeous. Like, it's so fun to see such a beautifully animated film. And just good stuff. If it's his swan song, it's his swan song. I don't care. I love it. Obviously, Miyazaki's still doing the good shit and making a film about how his son is a failure. It's great. Wonderful stuff. On the 7th, I did another double feature. I watched The Cost, which I recently did a Anatomy of a Blu-ray on earlier in December. This is suggested by the director, actually, Matthew Holmes. Holmes? I still have no idea how to pronounce it. It's an Australian film. I had never heard of it. It came out in 2022 at the Monster Fest and a couple other film festivals. Got a small release in October before going straight to Blu-ray about 2 weeks later. So I bought the Blu-ray. I really liked it. It was a good Blu-ray. I would recommend watching my video on it. I gave it 3.5 stars. I imagine it might be a film I give more rating to eventually. But I really liked it. I thought it was very good. I feel like giving it 3.5 out of 5 is a weak thing. It's like, that's like 7 out of 10. That's still pretty damn good, you know? So yeah, I don't know. I should drop the star ratings altogether, but it kind of helps me to remember if I actually like movies or not. Then I watched Godzilla vs. Kong, the 2021 film, because my brother was like, hey, I want to watch a movie. And he wanted to know what I was going to watch. And my next one was actually King Kong vs. Godzilla, which is out of order. I wasn't meant to watch that next. And he was like, no, let's just watch Godzilla vs. Kong. So I put it on, realized it was under 2 hours, which was great because he had to go to bed earlier. So it's a blast. I still give it 4 stars. I still wish that if the film was a straight 90-minute thing without Millie Bobby Brown, perfect movie. Like, I don't dislike her as an actress, but her whole plotline is so irrelevant that, like, I know they're like, oh, but they end up, like, getting Mechagodzilla fucked up. It's like, yeah, but who cares? The whole villain monologue could have gone to Alexander Skarsgård, the other main character of the movie. Actually, the main character, well, the second main character behind King Kong, I guess. But, like, or Rebecca Hall, but still, like, they clearly could have just removed them, had the villain do the monologue to the other people, like, over the phone or some bullshit. It doesn't matter. They're unimportant. The movie was fun. I like seeing them fight and fight again, and it's just fun stuff. You know, it was a blast to watch it in the cinema. I've enjoyed both times I've watched it at home, so, and I can watch it loud. It's great. On the 8th, I watched Galaxy Quest, which I realized I had never watched on, never logged on Letterboxd, and I'm pretty sure I watched that a couple years back. But I guess it was a couple years back, as in like 2016 or something. I don't know, I feel like I wasn't in the mood when I watched it, or it was simply I bought the Blu-ray for like $10. I was like, I'm gonna watch this, and then just wasn't in the mood and didn't watch it. And I loved it. It's 4 stars. I haven't watched it for obviously a good 5 or 6 years now. And it's just really fun to watch. It's also really fun to eyeball every single moment that Sigourney Weaver gets dubbed in, because there is a bunch of times that happens, including ones where she doesn't even say anything and she has a line dubbed in, which is really funny to me. The best one is when she says, oh, fuck that, but they dub it in for the oh, screw that, so that's just a fun thing. It's a good, if you like sci-fi, if you like Star Trek, it's a good film of that. Literally just Star Trek, but what if it was, I don't know, for general audiences and not just hardcore sci-fi nerds. Silent Night, Deadly Night is the next film I watched. I wasn't going to watch... Actually, I logged it on the 9th, though I actually watched it on the 8th, but I guess it was like past midnight that I started it. I thought it was a Friday night. I watched this one again only because Phil and Katie had just watched it, and I'm like, God, I guess I should watch that because I'd done my video on, you know, my favorite holiday movies, and I didn't add it to my list, and I had blinked and missed it kind of deal. And I was like, oh, I should add that, like, I should rewatch it to confirm if I actually really liked it, because I gave it 4.5 stars. And I did again this time. I gave it 4.5 stars because I still really love this movie. I think it's my favorite Christmas slasher film. It's one of my favorite slasher films in general. I don't know, just those early 80s slasher films. And this is like 84, so not early 80s. But it just does something different with the formula. It's fun. It's depressing. It's great. I was talking to my dad about it, and he's just like, yeah, see, I don't understand how someone could just do that and then kill all those people. It's like, yeah, well, they utilize it in a really effective way in the movie, how, like, he gets traumatized, and when he gets put in the suit, he now becomes Santa and embodies the person who killed his parents. It's great. Oh, Punish. I love it. I need to rewatch part 2, but part 2 sucks, but it's only good for the Garbage Day line, so it's like, I have the 2-parter on Blu-ray, so it doesn't really matter. Maybe, I don't know. Then I watched Tales of the Crypt Demon Knight on the Criterion Channel of all goddamn places, because my friend and I were bored and we had nothing to watch, and we just chucked it on. He hadn't seen it before. I gave it 4 stars again. I don't think I love it as much as I did the first time. I had like the Cinema Cult Blu-ray. I really loved it the first time I watched it, but again, maybe because I was probably watching it with Guy, he's not. I don't know, he started talking about shit. I'm like, for fuck's sake, we're trying to watch a movie. Look, there's demons. It's really fun. It's a really goofy movie. It's like what if just like Billy Zane did Evil Dead 2? So it's really fun like that. There are moments that like once like the energy drops, it fucking dies, but then it really ramps back up again. So it's like it has some moments that like falter it, but then the rest of it's really good. So it's fun. I'd suggest it. It's a goofy movie. It's not a goofy movie. It's just a fun movie. Then on the Sunday, I watched Doctor Who: The Giggle twice actually. I guess I'll talk about it twice because it was both in the same day. I watched it initially with my mum. I want to get it over and done with because spoilers and whatever. It comes out at 5:30 a.m. in Australia, which was like fuck that. And it was like 10 o'clock, 10:30 ish. So we watched it. I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. Again, it's one of those. It's a fun blockbuster version of the Doctor Who things, which I'm not always fond of. I usually prefer the individual standalone adventures, but these are specials because it's been so many years since I've watched Doctor Who. It's very jarring to go from like late Capaldi, early Whittaker, because I didn't watch most of Whittaker's era. I watched the first 2 episodes, didn't like it. Watched the last episode because my brother had it on, and I'm like, I don't like any of this shit. Thank God I'm not watching it. And then to jump all the way to the end of her special, which was just a mess, and then to this 2 years later, I'm like, was it 2 years later or a year later, whatever, but it was like my birthday last year that David Tennant came back as the Doctor, and now we've got the specials, and I'm like, it's bizarre to watch them in a way, because I grew up with the show. Seeing them as specials is very weird to me, despite the obvious end of David Tennant era specials as well. But even those felt like standalone adventures. The Next Doctor was crap, but Waters of Mars is the best episode of Doctor Who, so it's like, Planet of the Dead I still find fun, mildly forgettable, but I still really like it. And then End of Time is like, yeah, it's alright. So, yeah, but The Giggle was really fun. Neil Patrick Harris was great. I liked his whole song and dance number. I don't like when they lip sync to stuff like that, which was a bit annoying, but he has the performance, the energy, the charisma. Worked really well. And Ncuti Gatwa, boy, I can't wait to see him in the Christmas special, which will have come out by the time this video's come out, so we'll mention it later in the video. But yeah, so what a way to top off Doctor Who for the year. But yeah, I did rewatch it with just the whole family. We were all just in here because me and Dad and Noah went and saw Godzilla -1, and they loved it, and I gave it 5 stars this time. And I'm just like, look, sure, it's the end's really goofy with the whole the operatic music, but I'm like, it still catches me in the goddamn feels, man. Like, I don't have many movies that like pull at the heartstrings like that. It's like the parts that don't involve the operatic music, I actually felt genuinely sad, and then it was like, oh, and I'm like, I don't fucking care. You're trying too hard now, but it's like, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Some people are heartless, or some people really need to be pushed over the edge of like, oh, I'm already sad now, I'm bawling my eyes out. I'm just not that kind of person. I'm much more cynical. But I loved it as a Godzilla feature. Beautiful as a movie. Beautiful. My second favorite film of the year. So yeah, it was great. But yeah, then we rewatched The Giggle, and it was fun. It was good to see it with all of us. Fun to see Dad and Noel's reactions to it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm keen to see what comes out next. What else do we have? King Kong vs. Godzilla. Which, oh my god, I watched these all in the same day. That's a long day. This was the Criterion version, the original 1962 Japanese edition, which is the only one I've seen. I know the second disc for Godzilla, which has Godzilla Raids Again, has the American version, but I didn't want to watch that because I don't want to watch the American version. Maybe eventually. Like Godzilla King of the Monsters, I should watch that at some stage. But I rewatched the Japanese version. I gave it 3.5 stars this time. I gave it 4 stars when I initially watched it like 2 years ago. Well, 2021 I should say, because this video comes out in 2024. I don't know, it just wasn't as fun and new and fresh for me. It's really goofy, but it's still interesting. I like how they incorporate the Kong lore, and how he just looked goofy as shit. But it's just fun watching him and Godzilla fight. It's stupid, but it works. You know, I enjoy it. It's a fun little movie. Fun little art house picture. But then I realized I had done it wrong. I was watching things in the wrong order, so I went back a little bit. So from 1962, I went back to 1956, and I watched the original Rodan. Because I hadn't seen it. It was on the Criterion Channel, not on the Godzilla set, unfortunately. So I figured, look, I was planning to cancel my Criterion Channel by the end of the year, but I probably won't. I'll probably have to keep it through January because they got all these like Parker Posey films and a whole bunch of movies that I really want to watch. But it's Christmas time; it's hard to watch those kind of movies. So, and I'm watching all these Godzillas now, so it's like, fuck, when am I going to watch all these Parker Posey movies? But at least this has given me a reason to at least still be paying for the Criterion Channel, given how I've used Knight Riders, Hardcore, and Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight, and now Rodan. So I've at least had three movies I hadn't seen, but then I obviously got Knight Riders on Blu-ray. So, yeah, anyway. I thought Rodan was okay. I gave it 2.5 stars. Initially I gave it 3, but then I watched another film 2 days later, and I'm like, yeah, that's a 3-star film. Rodan is like a 2.5 star. It's interesting that the transfer was pretty awful, so it was like really dark. A bit of a criticism for the Criterion prints, I will be honest. But it's one of those. It does something narratively different, which I think does work for it. But I'm just like, I don't know. It just feels like a poor version of something I've already seen in a way. Where they're like, the mind stuff is really interesting, and then there's these little monsters. But the whole time I'm thinking, where the fuck is Rodan? And then it's not until later that Rodan shows up, and then he's only there for like 5 or 10 minutes. It just doesn't seem worthwhile to watch it in a way. Like, I feel like Rodan would be better utilized in another film where he's there for like half an hour fighting Godzilla or something. So, and I imagine he will be, because I'm pretty sure he's in the Astro Monster film, or at least Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. I don't know, one of the two of them, and I'm excited to watch both anyway, even though I'll be rewatching Astro Monster for the 3rd fucking time. So yeah, I didn't love it. I thought it was alright, but again, there were some great parts near the end where Rodan's just destroying shit. I'm like, this is great. Why wasn't this the whole movie? So yeah. And there was the simple thing of, it's just a pterodactyl that's just gigantic that lives in a volcano, Mount Aso, which I've been to, and it's like, oh my god, it's great seeing places you've been to in Japan made out of felt. But yeah, so, I don't know, it could have been better. But then I followed it up on the 12th with Mothra, which I had the Masters of Cinema Eureka release. I have never watched it. Finally got around to it because I'm like, well, that's the next one in the release. And my god, I can see why Ishihiro Honda does all these movies, because he's tremendous at it. I gave this 5 stars. I think this is my favorite kaiju film. Like, out of all of them that I've seen, including all of the best Godzilla films, including Shin Godzilla, Godzilla Minus One, the original Godzilla, Godzilla vs. Destroyer, I prefer it over Mothra vs. Godzilla from like 1996 or whatever, the one that has Batra in it, which is an amazing film. Like, so many of those films are wonderful films, but Mothra, everything about it was great. The characters were fun, they were funny, they were interesting, the drama was good, the villain was wacky as hell, and I loved it. Everything that it did so well. I know it's just goddamn Mothra, but it's also widescreen, it's Technicolor, it looks beautiful, wonderful transfer. It's just such a fun movie. And it's such a weird thing that's just the factor of when Mothra first like hatches and shows up, and it's just like the little larvae version. I was just like, oh, it's just a larvae. What the fuck's a larvae gonna do? But then when it goes next to a boat, it's like, oh my god, that thing is gigantic. I didn't realize it was 100 fucking foot tall. Because it's just like, you just see this puppet on water, and it's like, oh, you have no objective size comparison. I know the egg was gigantic, and you're kind of meant to like naturally assume, but once you see it next to a boat, you're like, holy shit, this thing's bigger than a building. And then, of course, it gets to the city and starts just running over buildings, and I'm like, oh my god, this is the best thing I've ever seen. And then when Mothra does turn into a moth, and it's just blowing shit away, and you got cars flying through buildings. It's so fun to watch miniatures being destroyed, and then to see little toy cars just flying right at them. I fucking love it. And it has this whole plot line. Was that the one with the plot line with the new it has a discount New York City, where they basically just have this whole city that looks like New York being absolutely decimated by Mothra. It's not actually New York, it's like New Frank City or some bullshit like that, you know. It's so fucking fun to watch because they kept mentioning this country that I'd never heard of. I'm thinking, is this like a weird 90s, like 60s geopolitical thing? And I looked it up and it was just a fictional country made up for this universe. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, it's so fun to watch. I absolutely loved it. One of my favorite new release, one of my favorite films I've seen in such a long time. And that was Sleepwalkers, are like two of my favorite films I've seen this year that weren't 2023 releases. And then, at least the end for this clip, I watched Mothra vs. Godzilla from 1964. I gave it 3 stars. It's okay. It's, again, I gave it a like at least. It's one of those 3 parts thing where for 90 minutes, the first half an hour is a Mothra remake. The second half an hour, Godzilla just comes out of the ground and starts clumsily falling on stuff and starts destroying stuff. And then realizes there's this big ass egg. I'm gonna go kill this egg. And then Mothra shows up and they fight and Mothra dies. I'm literally just gonna summarize the movie very, very quickly because then Godzilla walks away, leaves the egg, starts going after some children that are on an island for some goddamn reason, and then the Mothra eggs hatch and they defeat Godzilla. It's not great for its final act because they kill off the human villain at the hour mark, which was a bad idea because then there's no reason for the humans to be around outside of being like, we gotta help these kids. And I'm like, I don't care about kids that just came out of nowhere, my guy. What are you doing? So it definitely ran out of ideas and steam. So the first hour was really fun. And the second, the half and the last act was just kind of dull. Like, it's fine, but it's just Godzilla shooting a beam at 2 grubs and then shooting silk at him, and then he just falls in water, and that's the end of the movie. What else did I watch in December? So, I don't think I talked about Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, so I'll discuss that first, because we're talking about the 15th of December through to the 23rd. So, I watched Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, the classic Showa era. It's Godzilla. Having dealt with the issues from Mothra vs. Godzilla and obviously watching the DVD cut, I watched the Blu-ray of this and there wasn't that many technical issues, like not many lines at the base of the screen, which was great. So I really love this though. I gave it 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I don't know, it's just one, I didn't realize how fun it was when I don't know, last time I kind of partially watched it, I was at my mate's place and I was high and tired, so I didn't really pay attention and fell asleep, and the only parts I did see was just insane parts and I had no idea what was happening. But watching it this time around, really fun. It's just good. It's goofy as hell, but it's really fun. I don't know. But on the same night, I went to the Astor and in 4K saw Poor Things, which so far is my favorite film of the year. I just absolutely loved it. It was a kind of last minute thing to go and see it because I was meant to see it with my partner, and she wasn't getting to my place till much later, so I was like, I probably won't be able to go and watch it, and I really wanted to watch it. And then she was like, oh, well, I could meet you at the Astor, and I was like, alright, so I just drove there, and we met up, we had dinner, and we watched the movie, and it was wonderful. We had an absolute blast. I loved it. She was not as big on it, because it's not really completely her style, realistically, but it was exactly what I wanted. I don't know, I absolutely adored it, and I expected to win all the goddamn awards. I don't know. I don't really care for the Oscars and shit anymore, but, you know, it's like, it's a good film. I mean, Yorgos just knows how to make good films. On the 16th, we went to the Cinemaniacs, the last session for the year, and in 35mm, we got to see Batman Returns, which was really fun, especially for the one reel, which was the second last reel, where it was completely wobbling out, which was really funny, because it was like, this is awful. But it was like, I was still enjoying myself, because you could still hear everything clearly, and like it just kept going like in and out of focus, like every like half second or whatever, for a whole reel. So like the whole part where the penguins invade. Yeah, I don't know, I still thought it was really fun. It looked very nice on 35mm. I'm still pretty happy to have my Blu-ray, to be honest, but I don't know, it's a fun experience, and it was great to go to Cinemaniacs for the last time for the year, for the last time at Acme, so yeah, and I still got some stuff from the Kris Kringle and whatever, so yeah, I don't know, exciting times, good stuff, enjoyed watching it, loved watching it with Phil and Katie and everyone. It's just a good goddamn movie. On the 17th, I watched Invasion of the Astro Monster. Again, this is the Criterion disc. It still had a couple of the lines at the base, but by this time you kind of don't really realize it. So yeah, it kind of just flies by, but so that's fine. I don't love this film. This is like the third time I've watched it, because I watched it when I was a kid on DVD, and I watched it on the Criterion Channel a couple of years ago. I think is this the third time I've logged it? I should actually check that. It just says I've reviewed it twice, so I've definitely... I know that when I watched it last, expecting it to be the Ghidorah three-headed monster one, I was watching it thinking, this seems really familiar, and just the whole thing was really familiar, and then I realized I've seen this movie before, but I'd already started watching it, so I just kept watching it. And this time around, I knew that experience, so I was like, well, I will just watch it again, just to see if my Criterion Blu-ray looks alright, and it does, so honestly, sure. It's still goofy. I gave it 3 stars. I don't love it, but I still enjoy it. It's fine for what it is. It's still nicely different to the Ghidorah one, but also is like, I don't know, it's just not as fun as the Ghidorah one. On the 18th, I watched on the Criterion Channel, Frankenstein Conquers the World. Also known as Frankenstein v. Baragon, which it actually was, because it is the Japanese cut. It's alright. I gave it 3 stars. I enjoyed it. It has an interesting, one of those more focused messages on, like, you know, the impact of, you know, the atomic bomb and stuff like that, and science prospering through such tragedy and whatever. It kind of loses focus on that story plot and becomes big man fights big dinosaur. Wow, it's not that great. The ending's kind of lame. If you're really into the huge monsters and people fighting, then sure, but this one's just really goofy for me. I still liked it, but I didn't love it as much, knowing that it's just a guy who's just in makeup rather than a person in a rubber suit. I much prefer the rubber suit stuff. I don't know. It's just, that's more my jam. But I did really like the start of it, because the opening is of like the Nazis getting like Frankenstein's heart and delivering it to the Japanese, and then it's showing Hiroshima, and it's like, that's like something you hadn't seen in cinema by that stage. So, and like, it got miniatures and it's really well detailed. It's a really strong start to a pretty mediocre film. So yeah. But I followed that up with The War of the Gargantuas, also on the Criterion Channel. I gave this 2 stars. I wasn't a fan. It's just a poor man's version of the previous movie, but it's just 2 giants that just fight, and the characters from the previous film return, except one of them is now played by the guy from Twin Peaks rather than the previous American guy, and they're all dubbed anyway because it's the American version, so they're all dubbed in English because it was on the Criterion Channel. It's fine. I don't love it. I know a lot of people do. I know big name Hollywood people love it, like Tim Burton and Brad Pitt, and I'm like, I don't really care. You know, like, I know John Carpenter finds it a guilty pleasure, which is like, yeah, sure, that kind of seems up his alley. This is a guilty pleasure movie. But I didn't really love it that much. I much preferred the previous film. It's okay. I did like the start of it with the giant octopus fight. The miniature work is still quite fun. But again, now it's just 2 guys who look like they're covered in moss. And I'm like, I don't know, if I want a guy covered in moss, I just watch Creepshow. So, you know. But then on the same night, because I just wanted something that would make me feel like I actually wasn't going to fall asleep, because I almost fell asleep several times during War of the Gargantuas, I watched Josie and the Pussycats on the Criterion Channel, which I did not expect to watch ever in my life, and I did not expect to love it. I gave it 4.5 stars. I loved it. I've actually bought the Blu-ray now as well. I don't know what to say. I just really enjoyed it. It was really fun. I watched it for Posey Parker, and I stayed for the rest of it. It's just a fantastic film. I just had no idea, you know, especially because, like, it seems kind of cartoonish at first with the boy band stuff, and then there's a lot of product placement. I'm like, what the hell's going on in this movie? And then you realize what's going on in this movie, and you're like, oh, so it's a smart satire as well as just a, hey, remember those characters from the Archie comics? So, yeah, I don't know, it was really fun. I liked it. Good cast, too. And then on Twitter, I watched Bambi Meets Godzilla, which was like 1.5 minutes long. I have added it to my Godzilla list. It's basically exactly what you expect. Someone I followed had just like tweeted it because it was from like, 1969? Little hand-drawn animation. Really cute, really funny. I don't know, go check it out. It's probably on YouTube somewhere. I saw it on Twitter. I've never logged a film from Letterboxd saying that I watched it on Twitter before, so I would have put it down as X, but I'm also like, I'm not an X person, I'm a Twitter person. I don't even like Twitter anymore, but like, that was just funny. I did not give it a star rating, I just gave it a like. But then I was really in the mood to watch Mad Max: The Road Warrior. So I watched Mad Max from 1979. I get 3.5 stars. I like it a lot. I don't love it, but because I don't really care much for the drama with him and his wife. I don't know, him and his partner. It's all right. I don't care that much for it. The vehicle stuff, the bikie gang stuff, the bad guy, all that stuff I really like. I still like Max a lot. He's really fun. It's got a great opening to it. The car chase, the explosions, the wreckage, the carnage. It's really fun to watch. I know my dad makes a point of saying how it's so bizarre watching a film that was made in your backyard. And I'm like, I don't know, watching Mad Max does not remind me of Australia at all, except for like the landscape. But I'm like, yeah, but that's like literally out there. That's not like in the back streets. This is like 30, 40 kilometers away. Like north of Victoria, the Greater Western Sydney, that kind of bullshit. So, yeah, I mean the second one's Greater Western Sydney. So, yeah, but I like the first one. It's still fun, still enjoyable. But I did watch obviously The Road Warrior, which undeniable masterpiece. I gave it 5 stars. I have no criticisms for this movie. I enjoy every moment of it. I forgot what happened in it because I haven't watched it in such a long time. Like, even the first one, I didn't really remember much, but I knew the gist of what happens to his family and whatever. But yeah, I just really liked The Road Warrior. It's just a lot more fun. It's a lot more kind of goofy and crazy, but the characters are really interesting. It's an interesting world. I still think Fury Road perfects it because I just love Fury Road. But yeah, I'm not rewatching Beyond Thunderdome. As much as I haven't logged it on Letterboxd, I don't want to rewatch it. I've ordered the 4K pack for the series, so I'll probably rewatch it then, at least because it'll be on 4K, so that'll give me the extra oomph, but I did not like it last time I watched it, so I can't imagine I'll like it again, but we'll see. But then on the Thursday, the 21st, at the Astor, I watched Black Christmas with Phil, Katie, and Helene. Helene had never seen it before. That's my girlfriend, so yeah, I figured that would be fun. It was actually Phil and Katie who suggested it. They were like, well, Caitlin messaged me, she's like, hey, you wanna come with us and Helene and come see Black Christmas at the Astor? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. I had already ordered the 4K from Scream Factory, which annoyed me because I'm like, great, now I can't watch the Scream Factory version unless I watch it with a commentary, which I did actually compare the prints after watching it because I gave Black Christmas 5 stars. I loved it this time. I didn't love it the first time I watched it, but in a cinema, the right environment, the right mood, really good. It's one of those great classic slasher films. The 4K from Scream Factory is impeccable because it's still a dirty, ugly film, but it's like Texas Chainsaw. You get a clean enough print, and this could look really good. It doesn't look spotchy, doesn't look bad, but you can't see everything still. It's not like every single black spot is like, oh, you can secretly see that. It's like, no. So it still has that air of mystery and creepiness, and I love that about it. But it was really fun watching it. Even Guy watched it the other night, and he was like, he finds it interesting that it doesn't have the kind of status that Halloween does when it has a better ending to Halloween. And I responded on Letterboxd saying how it's probably because Halloween had so many sequels, where Black Christmas didn't. Like, even Helene had asked once we finished watching it because it has such an iconic ending. She's like, oh, is there a sequel that, expands on the ending? And I'm like, to round it out, to finish it. And I'm like, nah, there's only remakes. And she's like, oh, that kind of sucks. I'm like, no, that's what makes it so good. Because you compare it to Halloween, and Halloween is like, oh, Michael's still alive, maybe, or is he the embodiment of evil, maybe, and then you get Halloween 2, and Halloween 4, and Halloween 5, and 6, and 7, and 8, and 9, and 10, and 11, 12, you get so many, like Guy had said, choose your own adventure. Which Halloween ending do you prefer? Do you prefer the one that came out the next year? Do you prefer the one that came out 8 years later, or the one that came out 20 years later, or the one that came out 40 years later? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. It's goofy, but Halloween's still great, but Black Christmas is tremendous. It's terrifying and creepy and beautifully shot. Oh, it's great. It's so well achieved for what it is. And now we're in the Christmas season of films, so I watched Home Alone on 4K. I gave it 4 stars. I don't know. I don't love it enough to give it 5, but I'm very happy to have it. The 4K looked fantastic. It's still a great film. It's fun to watch. It just kind of seems a bit repetitive to some degree, which is ironic because I watched the second one the next night, but we'll talk about that in a second. But no, it's still a good film, great Christmas classic. If I had known, I would have put Home Alone 2 in my top 10 holiday movies instead of Home Alone 1, but we'll get to that in a second. That's a crazy one. But I followed this up with apparently 3 movies in one night. Alright, because I started Gremlins on the same night and didn't finish it till the next morning, so I just logged it as on the 23rd. I watched Gremlins on 4K, gave it 5 stars. Like I said, favorite Christmas, favorite holiday movie, masterpiece, genuinely love it. This time I actually gave it 5 stars. I usually give it 4.5 to try to give Gremlins 2 the extra edge, but I'm like, something just sunk in this year that I'm like, this is perfect. Everything about this is just perfect. Especially because you notice in the background, the guy in the time machine literally vanishes, which is wonderful. I had always picked up on the Robbie the Robot and Spielberg, and I never realized there's a time machine in the background, and it just vanishes between shots. So it literally goes back in time, which is absolutely such a great sight gag. And also just the mother killing all the gremlins. It's so beautiful. I love it so much. I watched Home Alone 2 Lost in New York on Disney Plus because I don't have it on physical yet. I'm waiting for a 4K to come out, and it was a 4K version on the website, which on the streaming service, which was still really nice. I gave it 4.5 stars. I still don't think it's a perfect masterpiece picture, mostly because it still suffers from the fact that it's a repeated formula of the previous film. But at the same time, I feel like that works in its favor, because it knows that it's doing the same thing as last time. Same writer, same director, same music, same editor, that kind of stuff. Same core team, same core actors, but this time you get Tim Curry, you get the Bird Lady, and they're like, hey, we're in New York, now he's going to be at a hotel, then he's going to be in the apartment building, then he's going to be in the park, in Central Park. So you get all these different layouts and areas, you get these different character beats that works to bring the family together, that brings like the holiday spirit and joy. Sure, it seems really ham-fisted when he's talking to the old guy in the store about how he's donating his money to the kids and all this kind of crap, and you're like, really? What are you doing? You're a kid, go buy lollies. Even though he does say to himself, to the old guys, like, oh, I'd rather this go to people who need it more than me, who I'd just be using it to, buy lollies and stuff. And yeah, it shows that Kevin has progressed as a character. He's a much more nice, nurturing, caring person, more thoughtful, but also more like on his feet. He's not a brat like he was in the first movie, which is great. And then, of course, it reveals that that guy was the store owner the whole time. And it's like, oh, okay. So there is actually going to be a reward for his good nature, and people are going to notice it. So it's like, it's still cheesy, but it's like, actually it kind of works, Just that last twist of like, oh shit, it was him the whole time and he's vanished. And it's like, oh my god, is he a ghost? I don't know. But like the first film, I was like, this is like a Seven Deadly Sins film. The second film was like, I don't know, The Night Before Christmas or something. I don't fucking know. I don't know. I didn't really do much of a thematic comparison. But then I watched on Tubi, which I've never used before. I watched Christmas Evil, aka You Better Watch Out, which is the 1980, not really slasher, but people call it a slasher film. It's more of a taxi driver maniac version of a holiday thing, and I really liked it. It has a beautiful scan on Tubi. It's from the Vinegar Syndrome release, which is like a 4K restoration director's cut release. It's a really good film. It's surprisingly, I love Better Watch Out more. I love Silent Night, Deadly Night more in terms of its aspect of how it does the trauma and stuff, but this one does it in such an interesting way as well. Again, when trauma films are actually like nicely built into the character and set up beforehand, not something that's vague and maybe we'll explore it later down the film as a dramatic twist. It's like, no, this just tells you flat out what traumatized him and how it affected him in his later life. And this guy's way too addicted to Christmas. It's hilarious. But yeah, good film. I would recommend it, especially on Tubi. Surprisingly good streaming service that's free with ads every once in a while. Really bizarre range of stuff. Some of it bad, some of it good, but it's Tubi, who cares? Now we talk about Die Hard. Am I standing here? Die Hard. I watched the 4K Christmas movie, kind of got a I still can't believe there are debates about, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Why does it matter? Why the hell does it matter? Just watch whatever the hell you want to watch. You know, you can just not watch Christmas movies for Christmas. I gave it 5 stars. I love it. It's great. It's just McTiernan just knows how to make a goddamn good action movie. What can I say? I did not watch Die Hard 2. I was kind of planning to, but then I was like, it's late. I didn't know if my brother was in bed yet because I didn't know if he had work on Monday. It didn't. He did not have work on Christmas. I did not know that. But I wanted to watch another Christmas horror film, something I hadn't seen before, and I looked up Christmas horror films, and it came up with The Night of the Hunter. So I ended up watching my Criterion version of The Night of the Hunter. I gave it 4.5 stars. It is a really goddamn good film. I know I'm giving that 4.5 when I'm giving Die Hard 5. It's kind of a bit barbaric of me. I feel like it's probably an easy winner for 5 stars, but I don't know. It's hard for me to pin a 5-star film sometimes. I need to watch it a couple times to really delve it in. But it is tremendous. I highly recommend it. Personally, I would recommend the Criterion because it is still a great remaster. It looks fantastic, but because the second disc comes with like the 2.5 hour long documentary, which I have not watched, talking about the making of the film, basically, I would suggest the Criterion for that reason alone. I even got the Region B release, luckily, but I've heard that Kino's 4K looks outstanding, but they don't have any, like, they've got like a few interviews, and that's about it on the Blu-ray, so yeah, it's like, it's probably if you already have the Criterion and you want a slightly better picture, go for the Kino. If not, stick with the Criterion, just for the documentary alone. But I did watch, they had a special feature on the main disc, which was, because the second disc is the documentary, the main disc has the making of The Night of the Hunter, which is a 2010 video, which is very, very boring. It's not great. It's basically just a bunch of guys sitting around telling you, oh, The Night of the Hunter is a great movie. Yeah, Night of the Hunter is a great movie. You know, I watched that as a kid. What a great movie. That's basically what it is. There's not much show and tell to it. Like, I imagined, like, you look on Letterboxd and all the reviews are very middling. And it was only like 35, 36 minutes. So I was like, sure, why not? It's just very throwaway. It's fine for what it is, but it's like, it's basically if you're a dumb person who didn't realize after watching a movie that it's good, then sure, have a bunch of guys tell you it's a good movie. It's not great. I wouldn't suggest it personally, but, it's not really even a making of. It kind of documents the history, but I feel like the 2.5 hour long documentary will give you the exact same information in a better foretelling. It's like watching the anthology box set for Alien, the Alien films, and how you can watch all 4 of them, and they've all got, like, if you get the anthology set, it comes with all the 2.5 hour long making of documentaries. And for the first film I did that, it's a beautiful documentary. And then I watched, like, Memoir, like the making of Alien, and I'm like, this is exactly the same as that documentary, to the point that it literally has footage from that documentary of Dan O'Bannon, who died after making the documentary. So it's like, this doco sucks, but the original one that's 2.5 hours is tremendous. So it's like, do I want a 90-minute doco that's kind of meh and mostly a cash grab by a guy who is like a glorified video essayist? Or do I want a good thing that's really well produced? I'm going to go for the good thing even though it's in 480p, because it's just really well produced. But on Christmas Day, hooray, finally watched some Christmas movie. Oh wait, I've been doing that for the past couple of days, haven't I? Anyway, I rewatched Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I figured, you know what, I've kind of watched this a lot. I've watched it maybe 3 or 4 times now. I watched it twice in 1 year within like 2 months of each other, which I don't really do, but it was mostly I watched it with my brother, we loved it. I watched it again like a month or 2 later on like Netflix with my friends because we wanted to watch it. And honestly, Michelle Monaghan is so goddamn good in that movie. Like, she's a good actor too. She just also looks stunning. So I wanted to watch it for that, but also I was like, I've never listened to the commentary track. And it's a Blu-ray that you put it on and it immediately starts the movie. So I had to actually go through my audio options, find the one that wasn't speaking Spanish or French, and get the audio commentary, and then skip back to the start of the movie. And I watched the whole thing to the end of the end credits because they still talk throughout the credits. And it was a really fun commentary. It's not the best thing in the world, but it's like, it's still fun to listen to them talk because I put on subtitles to the movie so I could still pay attention to what was happening in the movie. Because I'm like, it's like listening to a podcast. I can't do that. If they're talking about things that are happening on screen, then yeah, sure. But for the most part, it's like, I'm just sitting there like twiddling my thumbs, like, oh yeah, that's really funny, and trying to like not look at the information on the screen to distract myself from what they're saying. It's still a pretty good commentary track. I don't remember much from it, but yeah, I don't know. It's alright. My most memorable part was the part I quoted from my review, where Shane Black, what did he say? He said, "This is my favorite Santa costume ever," and it was just Michelle Monaghan in the Santa costume, and I'm like, yeah, I agree. But yeah, so after that, I figured I want to watch a narrative film that I can actually focus on, that's still Christmas related. So I watched Lethal Weapon. I haven't seen Lethal Weapon for a good number of years. I haven't logged it on Letterboxd. I'm pretty sure I had watched it when I first got the Blu-ray set, the 4-pack set. And I think I've watched the second one as well. I only remember the exploding toilet from the second film. Maybe it was just on TV one time and I saw that clip a couple times. Maybe it's just so famous. I watched this one. I don't remember anything after the first act. I didn't remember his daughter getting kidnapped, who the villains were, any of it. And I'm like, that's really surprising, because I know I've watched this movie before. I still gave it 3.5 stars. Oh, I gave Kiss Kiss Bang Bang 4.5, by the way. I love it still anyway. I would have just given it a like and not a star rating, but I still love the movie. But yeah, Lethal Weapon is like, it's a fun buddy cop film. I'm not huge on the genre, but I'm like, I feel like it needs to be a bit funnier. And that the sidekick needs to be gay. And you know what? The Nice Guys pulled that off pretty well, so yeah. I did not watch The Nice Guys after that, by the way. I actually watched today's one, which is, because I'm filming this on Boxing Day, the Doctor Who The Church on Ruby Road. I gave it a like, gave it 3.5 stars on the serialized app. I'm pretty so-so on it. I was like, yeah, I don't know. Comparing it to the other 3 specials, I love the second special most. But obviously the new Doctor, Shooty, is fantastic. The new companion's interesting. The villains were fun. It very much, I genuinely thought they were going to do a Gremlins thing, and then they just would like, nope, they're just goblins. And I'm like, oh, that's really disappointing. And then they just did a whole song number, which was fun, but all I could think of was like the goblins from like the second Hobbit movie, and I don't like that movie. And I'm like, oh, that's all that reminded me of there. That's the only thing I can remember from that whole episode, except for the girl talking to the camera at the end. And Mum was like, "Is she from EastEnders?" I'm like, she might have been in that EastEnders crossover with Doctor Who that came out in like the 90s, even though I'm pretty sure she wasn't in that. But that would be really funny if she was. I know I'll find out before this video comes out, because I do watch a guy who reviews these episodes, so he'll most likely point it out that she was in it, because he did watch that, and I watched him talk about it. So, yeah. What else? I don't know. Doctor Who's fine. Specials are fun. I'd say the second one's still my favourite, the Wild Blue Yonder. Maybe the Giggle in the next place, just because Neil Patrick Harris was great, and I liked his whole dance number. Then I'd probably go maybe The Church on Ruby Road, and then the first one. Yeah, I need to rewatch them all to kind of get more of a perspective, but I did watch the Giggle twice, so yeah, but I definitely prefer Wild Blue Yonder the most. It's just my favourite of the bunch. It's the one I enjoyed from start to finish. Yeah, didn't have any issues with in its own right. Yeah, I don't know. It was cute though. We'll see what next year, what 2024 has to offer for Doctor Who. So now we're up to the 27th. On the 27th, I watched Past Lives, because I got the Blu-ray in. It was tremendous. I gave it 5 stars. Somehow it hasn't hit my list of favourite films of... I mean, it obviously has in my list of favourite films of 2023, but like my favourite watches, first-time watches of last year. Because I've done a list of that, so I'll be doing a video on that soon as well. Yeah, but still, a fantastic film. Blu-ray was really good. Good special features as well. Not a lot of stuff. Commentary, a good featurette about it, but for $30... Australian dollars, it was pretty good, comparing that most Australian standard Blu-rays are $30, and this was an import from the US, which came with a slipcover as well. So, I don't know. If you want to get it, I'd suggest it. Definitely the Blu-ray, either from the UK or the US. On the 28th, for the 50th anniversary, technically a day late because it wasn't Boxing Day, I watched The Exorcist, the theatrical cut courtesy of that 4K Blu-ray set I got, the 4K Steelbook set. I hadn't watched the original theatrical cut before, and I figured, look, it's been 50 years, I might as well watch it, otherwise I won't get around to watching it, even though I'm rewatching it, because I've already watched it this year, because I watched the extended cut earlier this year. ironically prior to Billy passing away. But I will be honest, I loved the 4K. It has probably like one imperfection, because I listened to the mono mix for the first 20 odd minutes, and I was like, this is really quiet. I want to check out that Atmos mix. And then suddenly it all felt amazing. The immersion was beautiful. An absolutely outstanding Atmos mix. With only like one error being when she's letting the detective out and she goes to unlock the door, and the lock chain is like right in front of you, like on the screen, but you can hear it behind you, which isn't great. And I don't have the extra speakers in the roof, so I don't get that extra Atmos stuff. But for the 5.1 setup I have, it sounded fantastic. I can imagine on 7.1 that would sound tremendous. Like all the way around you would be brilliant. But just that one sound effect was bad. The rest of it sounded great. But if we're looking at visuals, obviously it's a key thing. I thought it looked really good until, that main exorcism scene. It felt really weird throughout. It looked like it kept dropping to standard definition, which was very bizarre. I didn't like get up close and look at it and whatever, but it just didn't feel right. Like, it didn't feel like it was focusing well on the actors or whatever. There was something off about it. But the rest of the film looked fucking amazing. I gave it 5 stars still. I think I prefer the theatrical cut to the director's cut. As much as, it's obvious when the extra scenes aren't there, and I was waiting for Pazuzu to show up in the kitchen, because they just have his face superimposed there. That's not in the original theatrical cut. That's only in the extended edition. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of hilarious, because that means it kind of cheapens the scare. It's like, oh, look, the face, oh, jump scare, instead of building atmosphere. Which, of course, would have led to you getting upstairs and finding the guy dead. Like, that's a lot more impact than, Pazuzu, you know? So, yeah, I think the theatrical cut is tremendous. I do think the 4K isn't perfect, but I'm still really happy with it, and it's the version I'm going to watch going forward, simply put, just because it's the theatrical cut. I do wonder if the Blu-ray of the theatrical cut would look better, but it's hard to say. I don't know. I feel like because it's the same scan, I feel like the HDR grading, because it's not Dolby Vision or anything, wouldn't really change much. On the same day, I watched 4 movies on the same day. So this was all on like a Thursday night, because my partner was coming over the next day for New Year's. So I figured, look, I'm just going to get this over and done with and watch a bunch of films that I wanted to watch. So I watched Maestro on Netflix. I gave it 3 stars. I wasn't very wowed by it. Great acting, good music. It explains why the vinyl sounds so weird, because it's not just live recordings, but also all the music is placed throughout the film is how it's placed in the, in the vinyl, same as like a Tarantino soundtrack, which doesn't really work because a lot of the songs in it, like, historically are all over the place. Like, you got a scene where you get the West Side Story, like, theme, and it's great. I love that song, but it's just randomly in there, and I'm like, oh, is this to emphasize that there's going to be conflict or something? Like, what's going on here? Like, is it meant to be thematically relevant? Am I meant to know that? Like, because otherwise it just sounds like music, and you're like, oh, this sounds alright. Why is this great song in this really dull scene, So it's really weird. I wasn't a huge fan of the movie. It's one of those I would have preferred they actually delved into him as a musician, but instead it's just, hey, did you know this great musician was secretly gay? And I'm like, cool, you could have still had that in the movie without it being the punchline. Like, all the great music stuff just lost its impact because I didn't understand the guy as a musician. All I understood was that he had a great wife, but I know he was technically bi, but like, back in those days it was one or the other. So yeah, I will be honest though, I think the makeup job was fantastic in the latter half of the movie. All the black and white stuff, despite the photography being fantastic, it was very cartoonish, and obviously it looks like they've kind of de-aged Bradley Cooper as well. He just looks really plasticky, not just because the nose is exceedingly big, but because of the rest of it too. But then when you show him older with all the prosthetics and it's in color, it looks vibrant. It looks really good. Like, he genuinely looks like the actual guy, and I'm like, that looks fantastic. Like, that's a great makeup job. But earlier in the film looked awful, and yeah, I didn't mind the aspect ratio changes though. I felt it very weird when they just kind of randomly cut to it being in widescreen. Like, obviously it's 4:3 and then in black and white, and then 4:3 in color, and then it just the black bars fade away and there's like just more color, and I'm like, just more image. I'm like, okay, was that really necessary? You could have kept the whole film in the same aspect ratio. I don't know what the fucking point of that was now. I don't know. I don't get it. Is it because she's dead and he's like, wow, I'm free? Is it meant to be symbolic? Like, I guess so. It's kind of ridiculous. I wouldn't really suggest the film. You might like it. If you like his music a lot and already know about him, like have seen a documentary or something about him, then yeah, sure, you might like this a lot more. But as someone who just doesn't know this stuff, it's just kind of just there. And I will forget it very quickly because it's just like, it didn't leave an impact. I also watched The Death of David Cronenberg. I have not yet got my, despite being a patron, I can check whenever on Letterboxd, I haven't yet got my yearly wrapped thing, year in review. I'm hoping Cronenberg's the top director because he was neck and neck with another director, Paul Thomas Anderson, who a lot of his Blu-rays come with the short films, which are all like deleted scenes compiled into a short film. So to finish it off, to make sure I still had Cronenberg as number one, I watched The Death of David Cronenberg, which was on the Second Sight 4K release of Crimes of the Future. It's hilarious knowing that people hate this because it was released as an NFT and then put on YouTube, and then it's just on the Second Sight 4K, which is hilarious to me. I thought it was alright. It's a minute long. It's nothing to write home about. It's symbolic. It's metaphorical. It's all that kind of arty stuff, but also it's like you can kind of understand what he's going through just by watching the images. The knowledge behind the scenes is much more interesting because it's simply a guy who had just lost his wife. Like, literally, Cronenberg's wife had passed away in the same house, in the same bed, and that's all he could think about was, like, his own death, and so he made this version of himself, and then it's just him and this dead version of himself. Like, he's looking at an imminent future, and he just kind of has to embrace it, because that's just what you kind of got to do at some stage in life. So, I think it's good on that note. Just it being, having that burden of being the NFT release is kind of hilarious, but I did not know about that until after the fact. Anyway, on the same night, I plugged in my wireless headphones, connected it to my TV, used my top Blu-ray player, which is plugged directly into the TV, so because the sound's plugged into the receiver for the other player. I say that because it means I can't connect Bluetooth to my main player unless I unplug the HDMI cable from the back, so the audio is not going to the receiver, but that's the thing. I watched Skinamarink. Because I had got the Blu-ray, and I really wanted to watch it before the year was over. I'm not really big on trying to get all the movies of the year done as soon as possible, because there's a lot of movies in Australia that we don't get to see until the following year, like May, December still hasn't come out yet. The Holdovers, Ferrari just came out in the last week of the year, and I'm like, I'm sorry, mate, I'm busy. Sorry, Michael, I'll watch it next year. My mate watched it as his last film of last year because he just happened to get the 7 o'clock screening, So, and then like 2 hours later, it's the end of the year, so... Poor timing. I liked it. I gave it 3.5 stars. It's a bit too long. I know that sounds kind of ironic if you've seen it. I think it's 20 minutes too long. If it had been a flat 80 minutes instead of the 110 that it is, it would have been really good. Obviously, maybe quicken up the pacing, but maybe cut out some other stuff. Obviously, because a lot of it's repetitive. I still like the last half of it, but it gets more terrifying later in the film. Like, if you've seen it, the film with her parents, that part was really scary. I love the ambiguity of it, especially with headphones noise cancelling. It's in a dark room. You don't know what you're looking at half the time. You don't know if it's just grain and weird footage or if there's a face in the dark or something. It's a great... As someone who's scared of the dark, it works. I'm not completely scared of the dark, but at the same time, I can have that fear, and it really works in the communication of the film. I understand that from the point of view of the kids. It's still weirdly shot, weirdly edited. I still like that about it. It's bizarre. The really really terrifying stuff that comes after the parents, the eyeballs, the face, that kind of stuff. If you've seen it, you know that stuff is really creepy and scary, and I really love that effect. It's still giving me chills down my spine. I can understand why it wasn't rated as like the scariest film of the year. I'm like, yeah, I get you. If it was like 80 minutes instead, I would have given it the 5 out of 5 stars, I still like the really weird experimental stuff they get into at the end of it, but I'm like, if the film had more of that and less of, like more surreal stuff and less straightforward stuff like it does have, I feel like that would have been cooler, and it would have been more interesting, like if it still had the same runtime. But if you cut out like just a bit of like 20 minutes at the start of the film-ish, you know, I feel like that would have been a lot better. Even cut out the stuff with the dad. You don't need any of that stuff realistically. If it's just the kids the whole time and you don't know where the parents are, you've never experienced anything with them, that is more interesting to me. So, yeah, it could have been a much better film. I can see why people hate it though. Like, I got two friends who hated it and they said that people were falling asleep during the movie. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I watched it late at night on my last day. The last night before I had to go to work the next day, which is my last day of the work for the year. So, yeah. Also, this is a new shirt. I haven't shown this off yet. My girlfriend's mum got this for me. It's got popcorn and movies and stuff, and says cinema and has film cameras and stuff. It's really nice. It's like my perfect movie shirt. It's really on the nose. But yeah, I would suggest Skinamarink, whether on Shudder or on Blu-ray. Blu-ray only comes with a commentary, so I don't know. I got it for $20. I don't really mind. But yeah, it's interesting. I feel like again, it could have just been better if they had have. It's either you cut out all the weird, surreal parts and leave the scary parts, or you cut out some of the boring parts earlier on. And yeah, you got to kind of do one or the other. Just cut it down, shave 20 minutes off of it, make it quicker. It doesn't have to be 90 minutes. I think 80 minutes would have sufficed because that would have been right in the perfect ballpark. 70 to 80, I think 70 would have been too short. And I know you're probably thinking, if you've seen it, you're like, 70 being too short? Are you kidding me? 70 would have been too short. 80 to 85 minutes would have been perfect. But still. Then I watched at my partner's place Elemental on Disney+. I thought it was really kind of lame. I didn't care much for it. She put it on because she wanted a comfort movie because she loves it, and I'm like, I gave it 2.5 stars. I was like, man, this film kind of sucks, dude. It's literally just Disney. I was gonna say it's basically my review was Pixar washing down racism, but in pun form, and it basically is. It's still more Disney than Pixar, but of course it's under the Pixar banner, so it's like, I don't know. Again, a lot of people had seen it just after Spider-Verse came out, and they were like, "Man, imagine releasing the most boring animated feature behind just after the best animated feature of the year," which isn't even my best animated feature of the year. In terms of creativity, I much prefer Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or the first Slam Dunk. But even Sovereign's Scavenger's Reign, far superior to the overblown nature of Spider-Verse. But at least Spider-Verse was also fun as well as visually inventive. Elemental was not fun nor visually inventive. It was so cliche, so dramatic, so boring. Yeah, don't care for it. So to rectify that, we watched Toy Story because it was on Disney Plus. I gave it 5 stars. And it's one of those things where, my girlfriend's mum had come in by that stage and she was watching it with us and she's like, "Oh, really? You want to watch a movie with real people?" I'm like, "What do you mean? That's a real person," pointing at Sid. But she loved the last half of it, so I'm like, I think it's a masterpiece. I give it 5 stars. It's my favourite of the films. I do love Toy Story 2. It's either a back and forth, but the first one's so perfect for me. So much, not just nostalgic value, but also just as a film, it's so beautiful. I absolutely love it. In 4K through streaming, it's a bit much. Like you can see all the dainty textures on like walls and shit. That I'm like, oh, it's like Half-Life. Like the original. Just there's really poorly done textures. They're just like glossed over and shit. It's hilarious. Like, I know that the characters look really smooth, but you look at the wallpapers and the backgrounds, and like everything that's meant to have lumps and texture doesn't. But like, that's why the carpet and shit works better, because it's patterns, the shining carpet, funny. We also watched Raising Arizona, which I gave 4.5 stars. I didn't love it the first time I watched it a couple of years back, but I rewatched it with them, and honestly, I think probably because I'm watching Red Letter Media talk about it, I was just blown away. I was fucking cacking myself. I gave it 4.5 stars. I loved it. I got to introduce to Helene. She wasn't really paying a lot of attention because she was building Lego, but she still watched the majority of it, and then she comes in, halfway through the movie or whatever, and she's like, okay, I'm finished my thing, let's watch the rest of the movie. And she's like, so what's this movie about again? I'm like, they steal a baby, that's it. But still, I loved it. I thought it was wonderful. She enjoyed what she watched of it, so that's good enough for me. And then, what do we do for the last stuff? On the last day of the year, Helene and I had gotten tickets to see a movie, so a free double pass. A double pass with popcorn and choc tops and drinks, whatever, from our friends for Christmas. So we went and saw Anyone But You. The best part about it was the choc top. I'm not a big popcorn person. The drink was alright. It was just solo, but yeah, the choc top was good. It was boysenberry. Oh, the film sucked, dude. I gave it 2.5. I gave it 2 stars. It was just bland as fuck. It had some funny moments. It was clearly a film that could have been so much better. Sydney Sweeney was terribly miscast. Turns out she's not good in a romantic comedy at all. Everyone else there was great. Glenn Powell just knows how to do a romantic comedy well. Sydney Sweeney just does not know how to act in a role like this. It's unbearable. Like, I get it, she's hot. If the whole gimmick was, oh, because it's Sydney and they're in Sydney, oh, I'm like, fuck off, man. Give me a goddamn good actor, and then I will actually be like, man, this is a 3-star film. Because it's still a really weak script. It fumbles up so many of the gags that it just could have been funnier. It could have been so much funnier. One of the gags that they set up was how Sydney Sweeney's character's mother was, as American, she's come to Australia, she's been there for like a couple of weeks now, and they're like, oh, mum's gone weird, she's like adopted the Australian language, she's like pretending that she's one of them. And then when they reveal who it is, it's Rachel Griffiths, who's a famous Australian actor. And I'm like, oh, that's a great gag. And then she just starts talking with an American accent. I'm like, oh, so she's not doing anything with it. She's just there. And that was just the joke, I guess, that it's just played by an Australian actress, which is so lame. Because, like, imagine how many people who don't know who Rachel Griffiths are not going to get that joke. If she was playing, like playing up the Australianness of, like, actually talking an Australian accent and whatever, then that would have been really funny. And now she probably might have been a bit in the movie, but honestly, she can do a decent American accent. It was kind of hard to tell. But yeah, if she played up the Australianness more, that would have been really funny. But they didn't do that. And then their most cliche Aussie guy was the surfer dude who fucking sucked. The only good joke he got out of him was when he leaves the movie abruptly to say that he found the best wave, he has to surf it. And you just see him later on in the credits surfing in a tuxedo. And I'm like, wow, that's a good visual gag. If only the movie had more of that. So, not great. Wasted opportunity. And last but not least, I introduced Helene to Pretty Woman before New Year's. And yeah, we kind of had that thing of we watch some kind of... Usually it's an erotic film to some degree. Like, we watched like Showgirls and like Burlesque and Magic Mike in the previous years. And yeah, Pretty Woman seemed kind of up that alley as well. Still more romantic comedy, but not really comedy, just more romantic drama. It's a good film. I gave it 3.5 stars. I don't love it. I think it's good. I haven't watched it since I was a kid, which they thought was really weird because it's one of the first times you see Julia Roberts. She's scantily dressed, and I'm like, oh no, I guess I didn't really pick that up when I was a kid. Like, I get it. She was a prostitute, but I'm like, it's a good film. She's great in it. Richard Gere is okay. Like, he's good in it, but it's like, man, I wish his character had just a bit more character. All the character stuff is so little, Oh, we plays the piano for, like, strangers, and he hated his dad. I'm like, great. What else is there? Please, for the love of fucking God, give me something else. So, yeah, I get it, he has a character arc and stuff, and it's about him technically as the main character, but she's the one who changes, and he changes. I don't know, who gives a shit? Anyway, that's the whole year rounded out. Thanks for watching these videos. And here's to the new year where I watch a lot more movies. Most of these, hopefully, that I watch this year will be stuff that I've actually got on physical. Not because of streaming, but because I don't want to be buying more Blu-rays currently. But we'll see how long that lasts. You'll see in like a week when I have another Blu-ray collection haul video, because I've actually got a lot of stuff that came in from Boxing Day onwards, so I'll be doing a video right after this. Anyway, I'll see you soon when I talk about my favourites of the 2023. I want to wait till I've watched a couple more, so I'll probably wait till February for that. Like May, December and shit like that. And Ferrari and Holdovers and all those movies. So, yeah. Anyway, ciao ciao.